And welcome, everyone. I'm Bill Newell, along with Rick Moore from MSO News Sports. We have Phil Stacey, Matt Williams from the Salem News, Nick Kukaru, sports editor of the Gloucester Times. And this week in the Salem News, now that Thanksgiving is in our rearview mirrors, we have the all-decade Salem News football team that's been announced. And Phil, maybe update us. I know you teased that project last week, but tell us what happened.
All right. Well, yes, we ran it in the newspaper and on our website over 3 days this week. Wednesday with the linemen, the tight ends, a couple of specialists. Thanksgiving Day, we ran the linebackers and the defensive backs. And Friday, we had the skill guys, quarterbacks, running backs, wideouts, and a couple of flex players. And it was received really well, which obviously we had hoped would be the case. 53-man team altogether, which I think Willie had put together and tweeted out on Friday, the entire team all in one place, at least the names of everybody. But we were able to represent every school in our area. And by our area, I mean the coverage area for the newspaper. And, some hard choices, obviously, who to put in what positions or who to get on there, but maybe put them on the defensive side of the ball when they were an elite running back kind of thing, but they played defensive back, that sort of thing. I don't think we had to do too much fudging of the positions, Willie, really, did we? I mean, move a guard to tackle or anything like that. I think we were pretty true to form with that stuff.
Yeah, there were a couple guys that we had on offense that played defense in college and vice versa. But I mean, these are athletes. These are guys that can play anywhere. So, certainly not a bad thing, and I think for the most part, a lot of character guys. So guys that wouldn't have said no if we asked them to play somewhere else. That's the impressive thing for me looking at the list. There's probably 3 or 4 guys that were Salem News Student Athlete Award nominees, ton of NESCAC players on the list. I think more than
old decade guys.
Well, yeah, more than a handful of guys that were all decade in multiple sports, which is pretty impressive. So, I think a lot of people look at the list, they say, oh, cool Division I players, a couple of guys that signed in the NFL. But, to me, I look and I'm more impressed by the guys like Kurt Hunziker from Masco that were all decade in multiple sports. I mean, how cool is that? Billy Whalen from Hamilton Wenham, same thing. And, I'm sure there are others that I'm sort of blanking on here. I could pull up.
Justin Assad, maybe.
Antonio Reyes, I believe, from Salem was all decade in a couple of sports too. I don't know if either of the Gillis brothers quite made the hockey team because that's a pretty tough nut to crack, but certainly possibilities there too. So
Flaherty, Brendan Flaherty
was an All-American in lacrosse, yeah. So just impressive stuff to me. I guys like that. That's cool. I think that's really cool, and I think that's kind of what high school sports is all about. Is not just going on the recruiting circuit or trying to get into the biggest school possible or whatever. I mean, doing multiple sports, excelling at multiple sports, excelling in the classroom. It's just funny. We didn't obviously set out to have a whole bunch of guys that fit that bill on our list. Those just, that's just sort of the biography of all the great players, right, as it turned out. And that's cool to see. I think, if I was a coach, that's something I'd be hammering home to my players. That's for sure.
And Kooks, you must have seen most of those guys play, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean, at least the NEC ones. So, a lot of familiar faces on that list that I'd seen. And, I couldn't argue with any of them.
Hey, I want to go over some of those names because there's some great names and players that, we have seen. But one I have not seen is that quarterback Griffin Beal from Pingree. So tell me more about him because, his numbers are incredible. And yet, Pingree's, not – to Nick's point just a moment ago, out of the Northeastern Conference, not in the Cape Ann League, and so on. So not in our area, but, in your coverage area. But Tell me more about Griffin Beal.
You want to take it, Willie? You want me to take it?
Either way.
Go ahead, and then I can fill in any gaps. That's fine.
Just sublime, really. I mean, he had a great receiver to work with in Justin Assad, but multi-year starter, could pass, could run. I think I can't remember if it's since been broken, but he had the school rushing record for a minute. He ran for 999 yards one year, and that year he threw for about 2,500 too. So just a guy that could do it all, great athlete, and ended up playing, kick return and receiver in college there at Union and did well with that. So, I mean, that just goes to show you how difficult it would have been. I mean, he played in the early part of the decade when the read option was really kind of not as popular as it is now. And he was one of the first real, pull quarterbacks that I can remember that was so elusive that could just pull that ball out of the running back's belly and make a guy miss and be off to the races. And I think you see that, he goes and becomes a kick returner in college and use those kind of skills doing that. So, his numbers are really impressive, but you got to also consider he was doing that almost 10 years ago when those numbers maybe weren't as commonplace as they are now. And numbers like his aren't ever going to be commonplace, right? But
in an 8-game season too. They play 8 games a year. So he's putting up 2,500 yards passing. That's over 300 yards a game he's throwing for in a season. I think one of the things, as Willie said, where it was earlier in the decade, Pingree was still, I wouldn't say embryonic stages of its football program, but they were only about 7-8 years in at this point. Started in the mid-2000s. Chris Powers was the head coach at the time, the architect of the program. And it was really a fun team to watch because, like a lot of their Evergreen League opponents, it was run and gun. There wasn't a lot of defense played. It was who could put up the most points. Teams would march up and down the field. Two Pingree players that we were probably two of the last guys cut, Willie, I would say, from our team were Johnny Spears and Kenny Dinkara.
Yep.
That were both tremendous athletes on the football, tremendous athletes, but especially on the gridiron, where they broke off long runs, they could haul in long passes, run back pickups and all. So Pingree is a really good football program. And, going back to what Nick said, he's seen a lot of the teams in the Northeastern Conference. This is a team that doesn't play any of our teams with the exception of, I think they played Ipswich once. And they played Masconomet a couple times, maybe even Fenwick once on Thanksgiving, right, Willie?
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm actually just pulled up that box score from that Fenwick game, and they scored 27 points. They lost 36-27 to the undefeated Bishop Fenwick team. I mean, not too many teams got 4 touchdowns. Fenwick might not have given up 4 touchdowns in the whole month of November that year in the playoffs. But, Pingree scored 4 on them, and obviously they lost, and, Pingree's not as deep, and we used to have big arguments with Matt Jenkins of the 2013 Fenwick team and whether they would have beaten some of the teams in the Northeastern Conference. But I'm just looking at this list, and Assad is on this team. Johnny Spears got a couple of touchdowns. Obviously, Nick Bonner, a no-brainer for the all-decade team. Eric Firer from Pingree probably would have been our kicker if it wasn't for Luke Samperi from Beverly and the success he's had in college. Eric went on to kick somewhere in the NESCAC. I remember I did a story on him. I don't remember exactly.
Amherst, maybe, or Eric?
Amherst or Trinity, one of those. Yeah. And hit some big clutch field goals in college while playing receiver too, I believe, an Ipswich kid. Great kid Eric was. So just another name from the past there for those that have been following us. But, I mean, this was one of the great sort of Thanksgiving games of the, one of those forgotten Thanksgiving games, because Fenwick was going for that undefeated season, and everybody, didn't know if they were going to rest their starters and how Pingree would really match up because they didn't play, quote unquote real teams and things like this. And Fenwick ended up having to leave the starters in to beat these guys. And there was no injury concerns. There was no way they were getting Bonner off the field. He would have rather broken his leg trying to go 13-0 than go 12-1 and win the Super Bowl. That's the kind of player he was.
I want to follow up with the 2 other names that just jump out, and these are the skill players from the Friday paper. which you love to be able to identify unique athletes, and that's what I think we could try to do here. One would be Billy Whalen from Hamilton Wenham at quarterback. I was great to be able to watch him play a few games over his career. And the other one was Beverly running back Brendan Flaherty. Just you watch him for 2 or 3 handoffs, and there's just something special about Brendan Flaherty. And so those are just 2 guys that just kind of jump out at me. Not that they all don't get me wrong, but maybe some observations from any of you on those 2 guys.
Well, I'll say this about the running backs. I think it was far and away the most difficult position to pick in terms of getting it to 6 players because, let's face it, we've had a lot of very, very good running backs. So how do you separate those very, very good ones from the half dozen elite? You know what I mean? Johnny Thomas is kind of a no-brainer. Doug Santos was a no-brainer. And then, you start going, Brendan, I thought was a no-brainer. And then you start kind of going through, Brooks had these great seasons at Marblehead. He went on to play lacrosse in college. Granted, he played Division I high-level lacrosse at Notre Dame. But is he better as a running back and whatnot? I don't know. I mean, Willie, didn't you feel that running back was the toughest position? I mean, I thought for a while, we got to put Scott Foden, the Masconomet, on there. He was a kid who put all these monster numbers at Masconomet and all, but ultimately, we didn't end up choosing him, and we are happy with the 6 we had. But talk a little bit about your thought process there.
Well, I have the list up here, and I'm just looking at the defensive backfield and the linebackers, and I think there's another 10 players that played running back, and most of them ran for 1,000 yards on at least one occasion. So, I mean, that's that just goes to show you how good these guys are. I mean, Tim Cronin and Will Quigley from Marblehead, we put at safety, but these guys could easily tote the mail with anybody.
Ian Coffey, Matt Andreas.
Yeah, Matt Andreas won the
Pierce.
rushing title in 2016, and he missed the last 3 games, and he still won the rushing title. Nobody could catch him.
Right.
So that's pretty impressive there.
Matt McCarthy from Danvers, too.
Yep, Matt McCarthy, we put at the return specialist there. So, but I do think when you look at the guys that we ultimately decided, okay, these guys are going to be the running backs, especially what I would call the big 3, Doug, Johnny, and Brooks. I mean, Johnny, I didn't look at his career numbers. Obviously, he lost most of his season. He had at least 3,000, and Doug and Brooks are 4,000. And if I'm not mistaken, and the kid from Classical might be in between the 2 of them, but I believe that in the history of the Northeastern Conference, Doug is number 1 for rushing yards and Brooks is number 2. So, I mean, that's pretty good.
With Timmy Frager, you mean of Classical?
Yeah, he was over 4,000, and I don't remember if he's in between. I know Doug passed him, and off the top of my head, I can't remember if Brooks did too, or if he's sandwiched in between them there. But certainly, I mean, for crying out loud, 2 of the top 3 NEC runners of all time playing in the same era, that's pretty impressive. And even Brendan, I mean, here's a guy that I felt we could have put any place. That's a rare guy that affects all 5 phases of the football game, whether you're talking pass offense, pass defense, rush defense, special teams. I mean, he could have been the return specialist too. I mean, he was, nobody in their right mind was going to kick the ball off in his direction. So obviously we settled on running back because of the wing T offense and the sheer number of points that he racked up. But I mean, he legitimately could have played, any position really on this team besides probably offensive tackle.
And, something about Brendan is people look at what he did on that Super Bowl undefeated team that Beverly had in 2010, and he was obviously the player on a team of great players. Kenny Pierce was on that team and whatnot. But I think back to the 2010 season when he was a sophomore, and Beverly made that run to the Super Bowl where they started off 0-5, and then they went undefeated in league play, and they lost on Thanksgiving, and then they won that playoff semifinal, and they went on to beat, I want to say it was Somerset in the Super Bowl. They were down early, and Brendan, as a sophomore, went up in the end zone, leapt over a defender, and made a huge catch in the end zone on 4th down to get Beverly on the score, and that really seemed to kind of turn things around for his team.
That's an NFL catch. I mean, honestly, like he went on to be an All-American receiver at Holy Cross, and I mean, that'd be the only play I would need to see to get him on my team.
Yeah.
That catch right there, that's,
I mean, Nick, who would you say, Gloucester obviously has had a ton of great running backs. Who in this decade would have cracked an all-decade list like this for you, say, in the conference?
For Gloucester, I say, Christian Sanfilippo and Jordan Shares are the
I was
two.
going to say Shares was really good.
Jordan Shares was an all-conference linebacker as a junior, and then he was the conference MVP as a fullback as a senior. So he could have been, he could have been at either spot. He was that good at both. And Christian Sanfilippo was just kind of a workhorse. He ran for 3,500 yards in his career. That's almost 1,000 more than the next highest Gloucester total of all time. And, he was just one of those that, you knew he was getting the ball and he still would, you still had trouble keeping him under 200. For my money, I thought the best player I saw in the NEC this decade was Brendan Flaherty, if we're talking all around players. I never saw Doug Santos play, unfortunately. I think he, his time, him and Gloucester never ran into each other, and I never got to see them. So I've heard that he's unbelievable, but I thought Flaherty just, you could kind of have, him bottled up and he'd still get 6-7 yards out of it on a play where he didn't have much room to do anything.
I think the thing with Doug, in the few times that I saw him, I mean, Willie is our Peabody guy, so he covers most of the Tana games. But the thing that always impressed Doug was that no one in the conference ever hit the hole faster than he did. I mean, he got the ball and he was through there, I think, really before even the defensive line could react. Not even just physically, but mentally, knowing that, okay, he's going to go through the A-gap kind of thing. He just flew to the ball so well. And Willie, you remember clearly that playoff game that Peabody had against Everett, huge underdog. And in large part because of what Doug was able to do, they made that a fantastic game.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. That was part of his development. He had to learn how to wait for the blockers. It's like you can't get there that fast. Type of thing. But no, I mean, I think, I think it kind of depends on how you define, who's the best player, right? Because like, as far as value goes, I mean, I think if you look at what Peabody was before him and has sort of been since him, and to basically almost beat Everett twice, I mean, that's, you're not going to find a more valuable guy. Obviously here's a guy that didn't play as much defense, didn't play as much special teams, didn't get to go to a Super Bowl, like Beverly did. So it really kind of depends on how you define what you're looking for. It's like that classic MVP, Derek Jeter, Alex Rodriguez thing. And that's the best thing about sports. That's what we all enjoy talking about. So, certainly if our all-decade team has both those guys on it, I take those guys up against any team anywhere if you get both of them.
I know, Bill, you did ask about Billy Whalen. I just want to make one more point about the running back. We didn't take a lot of guys. I mean, obviously in an exercise such as this, we want to take guys who had fantastic careers and, that are people still talking about, things of that nature. And I wouldn't say that this guy certainly fits into a one-year wonder kind of thing, but as far as one guy who really had such a major difference, and what Willie was saying about what Santos meant to the PB program, reminds me quite a bit of Vinny Gaskins in Salem. Salem's been down, as everyone knows, for a while. But that season that Vinny Gaskins was a senior, he was our player of the year. He ran for over 1,700 yards. I think he had like 800 yards in 3 games that November. 305 yards, 5 touchdowns on Thanksgiving against Beverly. Just an absolute monster. He definitely deserved a spot on that team. In fact, I was really happy that we were able to get 2 of Salem's great players on that team, in Vinny Gaskins and then earlier Antonio Reyes at linebacker. In fact, he brought him up first, Willie, and I was like, oh, God, yeah, we got to remember Antonio. He was earlier in the decade.
Tough one, because he played just the 1 year, in this decade, but he also, set some records there at Salem. So tough to leave him off, certainly. But
right. And as for Billy Whalen, I mean, what can you say about him? Maybe not a lot of people saw him that, follow Northeastern Conference football, but here's a kid who was a 4-year starter. He did absolutely everything that program asked of him. If it was simply handing the ball off, he did that very well. If they needed him to roll out of the pocket and throw, he could do that as well as anybody. He had great legs. He could boot it when he needed to. He wound up as the program's all-time leading passer, all-time leading touchdown passer, yardage and touchdowns. He ran for a ton of yards. He's just so multidimensional. And he's probably the best all-around male athlete at Hamilton Wenham of the last decade when you consider what he did in basketball. Was he all-decade in basketball?
I don't, he had 1,000 points. I want to say I don't remember if he made the team or not, but he was certainly in the conversation.
Okay. And he was the boys' tennis team's #1 player for 3 years. And Hamilton Wenham is not a ham and egg type program when it comes to tennis. He was an elite NESTA type player. So, Billy was a fantastic player. He 100% belongs on this team, along with Griffin and Matt Crowley, and who am I forgetting as our other quarterback? Mike Walsh.
Mike Walsh, yeah, another one, great one. I mean, I'm putting it in my column for this Monday, but I'll just spoil it now. I mean, one of the best quotes of the decade, I vividly remember Scott Connolly of Salem saying that it was impossible to tackle Mike Walsh because he was a freaking fullback playing quarterback. Doesn't get much better than that. And
Cam Newton before Cam Newton, right?
Kinda, yeah. I mean, just quickly on Billy, I mean, his record as a starting quarterback, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he went 23-10. So I mean, in this era of Tom Brady, looking this stuff up. Oh no, that's not right. I don't have this updated. But I don't know. It was something like that. It was like 25-5, something like that in his 3 years starting for Hamilton Wenham. So I mean, that's pretty good.
Yeah. Hey, while we're talking about Hamilton Wenham, I'm going to digress. Craig Genualdo, I know in the Friday paper, their athletic director, was named the Cape Ann League Athletic Director of the Year. Congratulations to him. Great guy, well-deserved, and we love Craig. Yeah.
Good man. A lot of people don't know that he played, or he was a member, I should say, of the Boston College football team for 4 years. And he is not ashamed to say he never once got into a game. He was, I don't want to say a practice squad player, but he was a guy that got the starters ready each and every week. And he's proud to be part of the program and what he was able to do to help out. And, I've asked him, geez, do you regret, having gone there when you could have gone somewhere else or anything? He says, nope, I loved every second of it. And I love being part of the program. And, that to me speaks of how he is as an athletic director too. He's not looking for glory. It's all about his program and that they do well and his student athletes do well and that the spotlight shines on the Hamilton Wenham athletic community as a whole. Clearly his peers in the Cape Ann League have recognized what he does for the league, not only for his school, but as for the league itself, and trying to better the Cape Ann League any way that he can. So Craig's a great guy, and I'm really happy for him. It's an award that he deserves. And, there's a lot of great people in the Cape Ann League, and Craig would be right up there near the top of that list.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think having the experience of whether you start or play or get into a game or don't get into getting any minutes at all, being a part and being around a Division I college program like that is a real learning experience for sure that you'll take with you for the rest of your life.
Well, I think it's a good test of his character that he stuck it out and, chose to stay there when a lot of other people want that instant gratification of playing right away. He stuck it out and he did what he had to do.
Sounds like Matt Williams, to be honest with you. These just sticking it out, like plugging away, hitting home runs every day, so whatever.
If I'm not mistaken, the game Craig did appear in was the NCAA football game. I believe there was a BC player with his number that was rated, a 59 or something, and he's quite proud of that. So that's pretty cool too.
Yeah, which game is he in? It's like NCAA 98 or something like that.
Something like that, 95. Yeah, but one of those video games is, it's not a game because we can't use the names, of course, but this player with his number on the BC roster, that's so that's him. That's pretty cool.
The guy's really slow.
It's like Chad Johnson. He's not happy with his rating.
Yeah, exactly.
Let me ask you guys this: a year without Thanksgiving high school football. How was your Thanksgiving morning? What were you thinking? Had you already moved on, already knowing that there was no football and so on? Any particular thoughts as we come down to our final few minutes here?
Yeah, it was different. I mean, I had already, you obviously come to that realization long before the day itself, but it's still strange to, get up. And I remember when I went out for a run Thursday morning, it was like, this is so strange. I would never be able to do this normally. Or, I come home and kind of relaxing. I was starting to look for Black Friday deals, so for my wife or whatever. And I'm like, this is bizarre. And, one of my buddies, I thought this was funny. One of my buddies texted me and he said, hey, just so you know, I know you don't really know this, but the Lions and Cowboys play at home every Thanksgiving, so their game's on if you want to watch it. I said, hey, I appreciate that. Thank you. But it was a good day with my wife and kids. The five of us had a nice little Thanksgiving, and, so be it. 1 year reprieve, can you handle that?
Any other observations from you guys?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty peaceful. I was quite happy with the way it went. Not gonna lie, I did the math, and it was 1996 was the last time I had done something football related on Thanksgiving morning. But I kind of enjoyed the break. Not gonna lie, I think knowing that the Gloucester versus Danvers matchup would not have been a great viewing experience this year. Potentially, might have had something to do with that, but I enjoyed it.
I felt that when we first started, Bill and I started a long time ago, and I was upset when I had to work Thanksgiving, first of all. But now, these many, many years later, I was upset that I didn't have to work Thanksgiving. And the other thing was I talked to a bunch of football coaches this week just on retrospectives, and I was surprised at the number of guys who said the very first Thanksgiving experience they had was with their dads at a football game, at a Thanksgiving Day game. And I was really stunned to learn how many people, that's their family thing, is to go to a high school football game.
1971, Beverly, Salem, first one. 2 years old.
It's funny. And what we miss is like there are a lot of stories that come out of Thanksgiving Day. Sometimes a freshman pops into the scene and does very well, and then moves on and has a great career. One of you guys, Matt or Phil, you mentioned Tim Frazier from Lynn Classical way before this last decade from your all-decade team. But the running back, he burst onto the scene, if I remember correctly, on Thanksgiving Day, his freshman year. He hadn't really played because they probably had very good teams back then. So he burst onto the scene and got, I want to say 200 yards, one of those incredible performances. And after that, it was all Tim Frazier, Lynn Classical running back, was lighting up the Northeastern Conference for 3 more years after that. But he had those are the memorable moments or performances that you kind of stand out for you on, get amplified on Thanksgiving Day for sure. Mm-hmm. Well, gentlemen, any other final thoughts? It doesn't have to be on what we just finished, but I think we have like 2 minutes left if you guys want to say anything.
Well, we're on to the winter season. So, it looks like we'll be taking a couple weeks of a break where nobody's going to be officially practicing or gathering or whatnot, as we get all the precautions fine-tuned and everybody knows what they need to do as far as masks and competition and things like that. But really hoping that, the season can begin on the 14th with practices across the North Shore. And, the number one thing, obviously, is for everyone to remain safe and, keep following those protocols, and hopefully we can have a successful and safe winter season.
Well, that sounds like a great place to end it all. Phil, you get the last word here. Nice job.
All right, thank you.
Well, I hope you guys everyone watching and listening or whatever, had a great Thanksgiving, and for sure, the other piece is usually it's a crazy time, because if you're getting ready for Thanksgiving, you go to Thanksgiving football, and then it's on to the playoffs, and it's a very busy time of year, which it is not this year. So, gentlemen, have a great holiday season ahead, and we'll talk again soon.